Guys, China just issued a fairly direct warning about Taiwan, and it's causing, you could say, discomfort in the American halls of power. Chinese officials declared that if China's sovereignty over Taiwan is challenged, American military bases in Japan and South Korea will be considered legitimate targets. I'm getting strong Iranian parallel vibes here because Iran kind of said if America targets Iran, then US bases across the Middle East become legitimate targets. And as we know from the June conflict, Iran actually did strike Al Udeid airbase, though there was a lot of, phoning up and US troops moving out. Check my other videos for full details on why Iran and America actually coordinated to de escalate the situation. Very interesting geopolitical dynamics there. But back to China. For centuries, foreign powers from the West could sail into Chinese waters with a handful of ships and just a few troops and impose their will aggressively upon these ancient peoples. When Britain and Portugal, for example, arrived hundreds of years ago, the mighty Qing dynasty in China ruled. We'll be covering the opium wars on this channel very soon. And by this channel, I mean on YouTube. But if you're watching this on TikTok, then yeah, we'll cover it here as well, actually, to be honest. But it won't be as cool because it won't be vertical. I mean, it won't be horizontal. Bro, let's just carry on. Let's just carry on. I'm going to be covering the opium wars on both platforms very soon. Won't get into it now. But yeah, for history without the Western spin, it's coming. It's coming. But the long history shortened is Britain and Portugal back then, during the Victorian era, overpowered China with superior military hardware and ended up seizing Hong Kong and Macau and flooding China with opium imports, drugs that were very lucrative for Britain to sell. Along with a lot of other aggressive trade activities, the days of unequal treaties being imposed by the Western powers on East Asian titans, large in population but behind in technology, therefore, unable to stand up and fight back. That's a lot of interesting history that's tied to the current geopolitics and the shifting world order that we'll get into at some point. But those days, what I'm saying, are over. China today isn't weak or technologically underdeveloped compared to the Western powers who once carved up East Asia like a juicy rice cake. Rice cake? Yeah, rice cakes are a thing. I'm not sure if they're juicy though. If chaler. Anyway, we're witnessing now the biggest geopolitical shift in Asia Pacific in hundreds of years. There's not been a shift like this since well before my grandparents, for example. And I'm no spring chicken myself. I just used that quote again. I feel even more old now. Okay, China getting bare brave nowadays, basically, is what I'm trying to say. As us Brits would say, getting bare brave nowadays, bruv. What's going on, bruv? They can afford to, though, be bare brave. You see, for better or worse, the dragon has woken, and the American eagle is unlikely to be able to keep China in check, keep China contained like historically they would be able to. The question is, will the US, seeing this shifting dynamic, seeing China rise up, will they pull back and, give China space in this more multipolar world, or will they dig their heels in and hold their ground, necessitating more than just American posturing and harsh words? Will swords, or more accurately, rifles and big guns, I suppose, cross or clash across the Pacific? That's the question, and time will tell. But one thing is for sure, this warning about US bases isn't empty rhetoric, and even if it was, it's bold from a nation as big and not a pariah state, right? China is not seen on the world stage as some lunatic, crazy state like North Korea, for example. So for China to be able to issue warnings like this, when generally speaking, if you look at Chinese rhetoric on the diplomatic world stage, they're very level-headed. They're very level-headed. Nothing like, for example, Trump and his crazy outbursts. Essentially, U.S. obviously rhetoric has really taken a downturn in terms of diplomatic decorum, for better or worse. Some people are really like it that you got this guy who's absolutely fast and loose with the truth, decorum, everything. China normally is a lot more reserved, but in this case, they're saying, don't mess with us, don't mess with our ownership or claims over Taiwan, or, you might see the business end of one of our ballistics or hypersonics or something hitting one of your US bases. China can respond if provoked. That's the new reality. China's not weak anymore. Though, for the sake of the common people on both sides, and really the whole world, because the world is too interconnected now for any conflict between these two states, China and the US, to not affect literally everyone else. So, for the sake of really everyone, one hopes that cooler heads will prevail. I was going to say provide, no. One hopes that cooler heads will prevail and win out over the warmongering nutters to warmongering nutters. Yeah, it's not bad. I might use that again at some point. It's quite biased, though, no? Anyway, for the unbiased, ironically, news and analysis without the Western spin. I'm Muffles, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, and a final note. If anyone talks to you about crypto and it looks like it's me talking to you, I'm not talking to you. That's a scam, okay? Block that guy before he starts talking about blockchains, bruv.